you have to guys with message.
And they switch.
You should be able to hear audio. Can you hear us now? If you'll just message in.
This I need to bring your audio.
Hey, in the back, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, good. All right. So this, I got about 30 slides and 30 minutes. So we'll go through the slides fast. I'm Scott. I haven't been to CAST for about 10 years or so. I've been staying close to home. My son had an accident. My wife and I take care of him. And I got involved with our local quality group called SQUAD, Software Quality Assurance of Denver, which some of you have been to. Well, we got clobbered by COVID. The landlord for the place we met tripled our rent. There was, like in a lot of small organizations, there was some politics going on. So I really got involved as we tried to save it. But a couple of years ago, Jeff Titleman and I ran the last conference. We got 100 people, dozen speakers, but we had to shut it down. So I missed it. And so now I'm back at CAST. My background as a software developer and a computer science teacher. And so what are my credentials? Well, I've been a computer programmer for a long time. And one thing that I hear a lot is that the power on my cell phone is more powerful than computers 60 years ago. That is just arrogance. Because the computers back then were every bit as powerful as they needed to be to solve the problems we had then. If you were working at a university and you were using the statistics of the time, discriminated analysis, confidence interval testing, and all that stuff, that was leading edge. So keep that thought in mind, is that things change, but sometimes they don't so much. And my last credential as a speaker on this topic is that I speak slowly. I could imitate some of the other speakers that we had, but I speak slowly. Okay, onward. Topics I'm not going to cover. So where are my notes? Oh dear. Back. Well, I will do it from memory. If one of those technicians can show up and bring up the notes nearby. Look, this is a picture from the Colorado Trail, which says stay on topic. Colorado Trail, those of you who don't know, is 600 miles across the state. It's a real gem. And I wanted to go through the list of things I'm not going to talk about, just to keep those expectations in line. So I'm not going to talk about how to get a job. There's other workshops on that. If you enjoy what you're doing, I'm going to talk about how to keep that enjoyment going. I'm not going to talk about age discrimination, because we know it's real and there's not much we can do about age discrimination. It's out there. Maybe that's a pretty good list. And here's the organization of my presentation. I'm going to spend half a dozen slides talking about our current situation. What are we in? And then I'm going to focus in on what is perhaps a problem for people that want to stay in software testing. But
which slide? Sorry, which slide do you want me to read?
Let's do this one. See, Colorado Trail right there. So I'm going to talk about our situation, the good parts of it, the not so good parts of it. That's the blessings and the troubles. And then I'm going to run through half a dozen remedies and solutions to what's going on. So far, so good? All right, good. We're talking about the same thing. Let's go on. This is actually a, where did you go away? This is a slide from a SQUAD presentation 10 years ago. And it's a reality about what were then called senior engineers. The first line is important. If you've got a job in testing, it's not a random event. It's not an accident. A selection process went on both ways, both the market selecting you and you selecting that kind of work. There's an old joke, and I have lots of old jokes about just what is experience. It's an accumulation, blah, blah, blah. But experience is what you get the moment after you need it. And I always like that. What else do we have? Well, we can do more than just heat up the room with the computer and run tests. On the downside, we don't think as fast as we used to. We think it's clear, but it takes us a while. Memory is not as good as it used to be, so we're going to talk about what to do about that. Memory is a bit of a mysterious process anyway. I expect to get paid what I'm worth. And so when I'm negotiating for a new gig, and sometimes that seems surprising. Well, you're not going to do as much work, so why should I pay you as much? I'll talk about that. And I don't give as much time to my employer as I used to. Okay, any questions about these? Good. Another slide from old CAST presentations. The methodology behind this is simple. For several months, I tracked the requirements in jobs posting in 2 different years. And then I took those requirements and put them into what's called a heat map, which is just calculates the frequency that certain words appear. Back in 2009, the key thing was experience. And if you fast forward it 10 years, all of a sudden it's all overwritten by the idea of automation, because it was going to be the silver bullet. And today, that silver bullet is AI. I did a survey. Again, I'm just talking about the situation we're in. I did a survey where I had sent out a questionnaire to people that I knew and said, are you still working or not? And then I gave them categories to check and say, tell me. Then I tallied them up. And I had a sample size, a biased sample size of about 72 people. Some I talked to in person, but these were mostly folks that I had worked with in the past. And so I had a good chance of getting a response. And so I said, if you're no longer working, check all that apply. And if you're still working, check why you're doing it. And came up with these categories. And in the next slide, I'm going to show you the results. Of course, if you got laid off, well, you're not still working. If you changed your family, being more important than giving time to your employer, then you check that one. And I did a little AI search to get some ideas for these categories, and the categories kept coming up as I interviewed people. The interesting one for still working is because I got bored being retired. Okay, on to the results. The most popular answer for why people aren't still working is they had had enough. They woke up one morning and they said, you know, this is just not fun. And something mysterious clicked. They don't know why, they'd had enough. And then some people got laid off. The most interesting answer there was a woman whose management came and said, you're going to have to lay off one of your staff. So she's laid off herself. Exactly, Griff. Exactly. Why are people still working? Well, there's money, but also it's because it gives some meaning to your life. Why are you here? What has the universe got planned for you? And if you like solving problems, if you like solving problems for other people, you still work because you do that. I'm not retired. I don't plan to retire. I'm only 75. And anyway, enough of this. This is a hype curve. Everybody seen these before? This is an old version of a hype curve. And where do I think we are with AI? Because that's the big feature. Where are we on this curve? Are we at the top of the first hump where there's lots of media hype, and then we just start to get some negative press? Although a lot of the negative press is just fear-based, they don't understand. Or are we more out here on the tail where folks are starting to pick up? I don't know, but I tried to, this hype curve came in 2008. So I would guess that the curve is a little bit different shape today or not. It's probably the scale at the bottom, which is on the x-axis is time, but that's probably months, and now it's weeks and maybe shorter time. But anyway, something to think about is where are we on the hype? Because we're trying to understand our situation. Where are we now? So to get to the end of this, there's an argument that I've heard here that software testing is going to change and we're going to be out of work and rah, 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 rah. So I sent out this slide deck to my friends to review. Best comment I got back was, Scott, they let you out on parole. And I saw this job description on the right, no quotas, no territory, no inventory, work from inventory, no experience necessary. Now, we're not moving to that, and I have no idea what this person did, but I doubt that it was software testing. Come on, there we go. So, summary of our situation is where do we focus our attention when we're trying to understand where we are now? And a lot of times, there's two ends of a dimension. So I got a picture here from my garden. Those green things are tomatillos. We have a huge garden, so we get 15, 20 gallons of these things. And the other things are melon. So do you focus on all the little stuff? Or do you focus on the big thing? Where do you put the buckets? You got reasons to leave, you got reasons to stay. You gotta put them together. But the market still exists for some of our skills, if not all of them. So much from where we are, what's causing trouble? I always include this slide because you just gotta scratch your head. This thing was the size of a refrigerator, and it was in the grocery store. And it was in one of those high visibility spots at the end of a counter, which everybody's gonna walk by. So it's prime real estate. Turn your change into cash. And it was such a great pun. I couldn't pass it up. But we change and software changed. And there's four things I'm going to introduce and talk about in this talk. First one is hearing and comprehension. What did you say? Huh? People get tired of that. I wear hearing aids. What do the hearing aids do? They take the sound and stick it in my head. But if you're talking lickety-split, there's no comprehension that comes with it. So I'm going to talk about that. Energy. I had a gig before last. I do contract work. I take 3-month contracts, 6-month contracts. I try to work in the cold and dark times of the year, and then I take summer, my wife and I go backpacking. But contract before this, it was part-time until a release came. And then it became a death march and a full-time job. So what do you do when you've got less energy? And the quick clue is you take naps. So I cornered one of the lads who works here and said, "Hi, it's late in the afternoon, I'm getting tired. Where in this modern new building can I take a nap?" And the answer was, I'll get back to you, but they never did. So, culturally, I enjoy working with people. But I'm usually the oldest person on the team or thereabouts. And so when there's talk about concerts and music, when they're recruiting people for the ultimate Frisbee team, you just miss out. I got some more thoughts on that. And lastly, we're going to talk about memory. So those are 4 changes that we're going to talk about. Oh dear, where there's ways to get it wrong. Just getting more technical knowledge is not the path to go. Designing and building things the way you used to is also the wrong way. And just using your old skills, you got to do something new. Wrong way. Anybody else here, long trail hiker, Colorado Continental Divide? You get a trail name. And my trail name is Wrong Way Slim, because when I come to a junction, I usually go the wrong way. Anyway, this is not the answer. John Henry, the Steel Driving Man. Anybody know that myth? Griff, you want to tell us?
It was a competition. The railroad decided they wanted to implement a new piece of technology that drives spikes into the railroad. And they were going to replace all their humans, and then they chose the best person, that John Henry, to compete against the particular piece of technology. They had the competition, and John Henry won, and then he died right after it from exhaustion. So
if you're going to get into a contest with a machine, don't die. And when it's man versus machine, usually man loses, because that's why the machine was invented in the first place. And so you don't want to compete with AI. I guess I'll just leave it at that. There was a remark made at one of the talks yesterday that one of the real achievements of large language models is the ability to have human language speak to the computer. And there's an old joke that says, why do programming languages not look like English? And the answer is, programmers aren't very good at English. And so the fact that they have finally conquered that is good. Okay, new skills, response to change, new skills to learn. I'm in a room with some pretty talented teachers here. And some teachers actually go the step, and the first thing they do with their students is they ask them, how do you learn? Do you want lectures? Do you want a bunch of exercises? Do you want tough challenges? Do you want, and the really self-confident teachers can then just watch what the students are doing and switch in the middle of their presentations. It's a little bit cocky to say, hey, no matter how you learn, I can teach you. But that's the first thing. You got to understand how you learn. And there's a lot out there on the web. I personally don't like tutorials and YouTubes. I'll start at a YouTube and say, no, that's not what I want, or you're speaking way too fast, even though I've got closed captioning on. When I am reading something, because I could read better than I can listen, Wikipedia is my go-to. I hopscotch from one technical term. I'll say, what did they mean by this? Look it up on Wikipedia. It'll give me a couple of paragraphs from a high level, and then that'll introduce new terms, and you can be addicted and do that for hours, but it's a great way to learn, as opposed to hiring some consultant or thumbing through a book or getting way off topic. So Wikipedia is a good way to go. I also learned from chatbot generated code. I rarely write code from scratch anymore because the chatbots can do it a whole lot faster than I can. My job is to integrate little pieces together. But I'll say something to, say, Gemini, write me some Python code that does this. And what happens? Gemini will come back and say, well, first of all, Gemini always flatters you. Oh, that was a great question, Scott. I'm glad you asked it. And then it'll say, there's 3 ways that Python could do that. And in reading those 3 different ways, I learned, oh, I never thought to use that data type in Python. Or I never thought to use that very Pythonic approach to getting things done. And so when you read through generated code, you're the student and you learn. Software testing is changing. Just because you knew boundary value analysis and equivalence class partitioning, nobody cares anymore because those kinds of parameter-driven unit tests are done automatically for you. So who cares about that? What is changing also is that there's workflow expectations. When you go to work, like I do as a consultant, they expect you to learn the standard set of tools so that you check in your code a standard way, you check in your bugs a standard way. They expect you to use a certain IDE, and that's all learning independent of your skills as a test designer. And then testing web apps is an entirely different ballgame. And so there's a whole set of tools that you need to learn to do that. And that didn't exist. So far, so good? Okay. So the solution is instead of going all one direction with technical knowledge, you mix it up. Sometimes the water flows to this ocean because you're learning that kind of notion. And sometimes it goes the other way. And here's a preview of things I'm going to talk about. I'm going to skip over the memory workshop, actually doing the workshop because I don't think we've got time. I'm going to talk about how you can coach younger colleagues, some old skills you want to improve. I'm going to end up talking about Athena. Okay, the memory workshop was going to work like this. And I did a dry run of this talk at a local software freedom meetup, August 3rd. And this was a lot of fun, but it took about 10 minutes. So I can't do it. But here's what it does. The point I'm trying to make is that don't rely and use memory tools that you're used to. So the exercise went like this. I would hold up a sheet of paper with 6 digits on it, give you 2 seconds to look at it, and then drop it. And then I would say, so what were those 6 digits? And there'd be just a chorus of different answers. And then I would give them this tip. Every number has a name. You probably learned that in elementary school. So 1, 2, 3 is really 123. So if you take 6 digits, break them into 2 sets of 3, think of the name given to that number, then you've got it. And so that's what the memory was going to be work about. Yeah, you couldn't use your laptop, you couldn't write it down. Is that okay so far? All right. How to best work with an older tester. Speak slowly. I'm on the phone with somebody, often customer service, and they're just yammering, and while they're going, I'm going, stop, 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 and eventually they hear me and they stop. and I say, it's my problem, but I need your help. You need to speak at about this speed. And sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't. But nobody, I just got tired of saying, could you, it sounded like you were asking me a question. Could you ask me that? No, it's okay to ask people to speak slowly. And then there's this bad habit, putting your hand in front of your mouth. I lost my hearing about 30 years ago, in my 50s. And unintentionally, I learned how to read lips, because you just start getting good at it. And I didn't realize what I was doing until I was watching a football game on TV with my daughter. And there was a shot in on the coach talking to the players on the sidelines. And so I said to my daughter, do you want to know what the coach just said? And she said, well, sure, Pops, what did he say? And so I got it pretty right. And that made me realize, oh yeah, I've learned how to read lips. Plus, football coaches have a very limited vocabulary, especially when addressing the players on the sidelines. But it works, and I would expect some of you are getting good at that skill as well. Another thing, I don't know if you've tried this or not, but I was on a project where there was a very good engineer who was kind of a jerk. He would berate people during the meetups and stuff. And so one morning I said, Andre, can we go talk? Let me just step into a room and have a private conversation. And having the white hair and all that, he went along with it. But as soon as he got into the room, it was, okay, Scott, I know what you're going to say, and I'm taking my gloves off. And the conversation was simple. Andre, this is what I just saw. This happened. And this is how it made me feel. And if you're interested, Andre, let's talk about solutions we can do to keep this from happening. And those conversations I've had at many, many gigs, I encourage you to do the same thing. Because we're all in this together. Okay, change, old skills to burnish. One of the things that I appreciate in testers is the ability to act like a cub reporter. Here's where I went. Here's what I saw. This is why it's newsworthy. And I'm reporting it to you as clearly as I can. That skill is still there. You've got to be ready to learn the tools and procedures for your gig. Let's talk a bit about troubleshooting and root cause analysis, because I don't think that's something that AI can do. Anybody here follow Judeo Pearl? He's an AI researcher. Well, he wrote a book entitled The Book of Why. And he tries to explain, using causal terms, the way to do research. And I think there's a gram of truth into what he's saying. He was talking about RCTs, random control trials as his kind of data, but I think it would apply to us. And we'll just talk about that. And the last one, well, that's been my bread and butter. I take a gig, I sit down and say, what do you want to know? If I can then meet with developers, we'll design a bunch of tests, we'll design this many, we've got time to run this many. And then once we get in there and start doing work and getting more answers, we get a whole new plan. This site is still up, and it's from a book written a long time ago. But if you've got this skill, which I suspect many of you do, Furnish it. How do you debug a bug in the sense of, is my test showing what I think it can? Any questions? It's from debuggingrules.com. And it's a good poster to have around. Okay. Moving on. There was a guy named Thomas Bowdler in the late 1800s who made a ton of money taking all the racy, sexy parts out of Shakespeare and out of Greek myths because people didn't want to know that that stuff was going on. And one of the things that he did, according to Bullfinch, was he updated the Mentor myth. Mentor was the goatherd, right? Ulysses or Odysseus is heading out and he says, Mentor, your job is to take care of Penelope and Telemachus, run the kingdom until I get back. Well, the guy's a goat herd. You know, he knows when to move the flock to water and in better pastures. But he had no idea how to run the kingdom. And the answer was, every time Mentor gets in a tough spot, Athena comes in and jumps in his body. She does the right thing, and off they go. Well, Thomas Bowdler could not have a powerful woman. And so he just kind of wrote her out of the myth altogether and made it, this is about Mentor. It's not. And so you, if you've been in job situations where you've seen somebody act like the goddess Athena, and is that a skill that you can you step in and say, you know, diplomatically, this is where we're going. You don't say we're going to drop off a cliff and blah, 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 and jump in and use your wisdom to correct the situation. It's a nice picture of goats. This is two extremes from being down in Mexico to a workshop of a good friend of mine, energy. For my ideal job, I like to work at home a couple of days a week so I can take naps. Just a short cat nap. But I like to get in and get to know the people in the gig. For my memory, I have lots of logs, lots of journals, and I turn on that feature on my iPhone where it will transcribe what's being said so I get all the information where I can read it. For learning, well, if you've got your curiosity, my guess is that you're still scratching that itch and it's not going to go away. For pace, I do victory dances when the project accomplishes something, and I also I have distractions. I'm a fiddle player, and so when the world is getting crazy, I'll grab my fiddle and I'll play a few tunes. And my wife says, "Good, Scott, keep it up." And I play the music. And as for ego in your job, do you really have to be the top dog anymore? Do you have to be the best programmer, the pick of the litter? No, you probably never did. Don't let that get in the way. So when you're making your ideal job, make it from home. Opportunity to write things down. Hey, if you can get your employee to pay to learn something, so much the better. So here's the summary. How am I doing for time?
15 minutes.
How many?
15.
15 minutes? I thought I had 30 minutes. Oh dear. Well, in that case, no. Respond to changes in yourself, don't deny them, and what's going on with our profession. It's a comment in the middle there that's come up many times. The challenges are with people and not with the technology. And I think I first ran into that with Jerry Weinberg. Well, that's me and Jerry at CAST in Colorado Springs in 2009. And he was a delightful fellow. He was given a talk on systems thinking. And I was talking on a real crowd pleaser called Testing is Applied Epistemology. And so I went to what we do as testers is the same kind of experiments that other people run. Anyway, and somehow Jerry and I found common ground and talked for a couple hours. And I guess the last thing to leave you with is keep learning. Use the internet as your teacher and the community as your friend. Okay.
Okay,
What's that?
questions and answers?
What do I do?
Susan?
Oh, time.
For questions, time for questions now.
Yes.
Okay.
Who's facilitating?
I could have planted some questions. Could have given one to like Ben or somebody and who would raise his hand and say, Scott, is it true that? But I didn't do that. What I've given you is a different kind of talk. When I talked about test automation or others, it was like, here's the step, here's step. And if you follow these steps, you'll get to this goal. And I'm saving you having to trial and error to learn. But this has been more a collection of stories about what change is and what's going on.
Eric?
Do you have any anything more to add of things that you don't think have changed, the stuff that's timeless or that you haven't had to update your thinking much about over time?
Well, there's the approach of the context-driven approach to testing hasn't changed too much because in itself, it's very flexible. You go into a situation and there is no best practice, and you leverage what's already in place. So that's it. There's a bunch of thoughts I'd like to get rid of. I was talking to Doug Hoffman about this yesterday, bouncing some ideas off of him, and it was like this. 20 years ago or so, testers were seen as second-class citizens. And the reason that you were testing is because you weren't good enough to develop. That is gone. I don't hear any of that at this conference. And there's still a hierarchy where testers end up at the bottom. But it's not quite the ceiling that it used to be. And some of it is other factors. You know, I'm a guy. That makes some things easier. I'm an old guy. That makes some things easier. So that's one I'm glad to see go. Other questions?
Yeah, building off that, for me, what I've seen, I'm older than I look. As time has gone through, as time has progressed, it's like I always knew that like the technical problems were not actually people problems, but getting older, it's always about how people are not working together well, as opposed to the technology.
Yeah, so to repeat a Griff's comment is that the problems are because people aren't working well together. And Jerry Weinberg also wrote a book about this called The Psychology of Computer Programming. And he talks about many things, including the games that some software developers play. And I think I got this from Weinberg, is that a lot of software developers are just insubordinate. They don't want you telling them what to do, and you don't know enough to tell them what to do. And so one of the games they play is like this. Okay, you want me to do this. I don't want to. You want me to do this. So I say, okay, I'll do it. And you keep checking and you come back until it's like, oh, we're out of time. So there's only time left to do what I wanted to do, not what you wanted to do. And that's an example of what you're talking about. And it's a people problem. And I assume that there's probably expertise at this conference to know how to deal with that game. I tried my hand as a manager, and I wasted a lot of money, caused a lot of heartache and anxiety, and decided I'm much better dealing with computers than trying to figure out the office politics and all that kind of stuff.
We have one more question from Curtis and one more question from virtual attendees.
Okay. What are your thoughts on staying in testing when it seems like market forces are pushing at least me into other disciplines?
So the question was, what are my thoughts on staying in testing when market forces are pushing us in other directions? You got that right? I am an incurable optimist. I think that the testing tasks and the business model that compensates us as testers is going to keep up and exceed what we're seeing. I know I read the Wall Street Journal, not for its editorials, but for its comments on business, and they've got all these alarmist stories about this company laid off this many people and all these things are going. I think I need a little more data to see if that's true. But I think that a reason to stay is to take advantage of the wisdom that you've got and pick up the technology like everybody else is.
Gary.
I've been pulled out of testing for the 4th time now. And this is the first time I was actually told I had to. The rest of the chances were opportunities. And I couldn't return to testing if I really wanted to. You can stay a tester if that's what your goal is. It's just as you get older and you start to value some of the things on Scott's chart, like money, freedom, how you're treated at work, you might make a different choice. I mean, I think that, you having more skills and more experience means you're going to be tapped to do other things, but it doesn't mean you have to do them. Keep just only apply tester jobs if that's what you want.
Yeah. I'm not going to try and summarize that, Eric, but I think everybody heard you.
Ben,
I'm okay with letting Griffin go first, because I saw how he grabbed that card.
What a quick comment. It doesn't mean that you can go work at any place in the way that you want to. So as you become more experienced, the set that's available or that you'll tolerate tends to decrease.
And it's more the second than that those opportunities. Exactly.
Very true.
Everybody hear that?
Yeah, so I've got 2 things. First, my last couple of roles have been not testing roles, but my testing expertise is absolutely necessary for those roles. One was product manager for a testing tool company, and now I'm AI researcher for a testing tool company. So I found things that need my knowledge, and my understanding of testing and experience there is probably what's valued most, and is why I'm still there. Now, along with this, with my experimentation and learning about AI, which I was at a good couple of years ago, when I think of all of what I see people now using AI to generate code, I think there's going to be more opportunity for testers than ever. People may not realize it yet until they actually get their AI generated code, or their AI generated code with the help of more junior developers that's not well designed out there. You're going to recognize that there's going to be a need. So that presents a challenge to those in testing roles to learn about how to test the non-deterministic AI systems, because the approaches you've been using in some ways will work, and in other ways you'll need to develop new methods.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank Ben for that, because he's right. As we move into that phase of AI generating code, our need is going to go up.
Building off of that, referring back to your hype cycle, I've gone through 4 or 5 cycles where the testing people are going to be all replaced by automated tools. people in name the third world country. And it's always the height at the top of the hype cycle is the place where there's going to be no jobs. And then you just have to have some faith and be willing to wait. And as soon as the hype cycle starts to die down, then testing starts to appear at the better places. And it'll be different, but it comes back.
Thank you. Thank you.
We have a question. So have you read Blanford Myers 1979 book, The Art of Software Testing? Is it still relevant?
So the question was, have you read Blanford Myers' 1979 book, The Art of Software Testing, and is it still relevant? The first part's easy. Yes, I've read it, and I read the second edition. Is it relevant? No. Glenford was, sorry, I was trying to be succinct in my answer. Glenford said that the main objective of software testing is to find and report bugs. That's what he said. It was very narrow. And that dogma ruled our profession for the longest time. Well, I'll just leave it at that. So no, that book is no longer relevant. If you had to pick a book today on our profession, what would you pick? I'm asking you guys. What books? I mean, I've got my favorites, but it would be on Kindle. It wouldn't be where I'm turning the pages. That is telling right there.
But Lessons Learned is a good book.
Yeah, so there's
Ken's book is good, but it's dated.
So there's Lessons Learned in Software, which was Kaner, Bach.
Yeah.
Yeah, the guy from
Right.
Texas. And then there's a lot of good stuff in there. And what was the other one?
Ken's original book on testing computer software, the one that I read in '87, that was like, oh my God, this is reality.
No, it's a good book.
But it's dated at this point.
When my wife and I were taking care of our son's bicycle accident, and I kind of dropped away from AST and organizations, I still kept working with Kim Kaner
Oh, yeah.
because he needed somebody, when he was teaching his professional courses, he needed somebody to be his TA, do that. And so, I don't know if you know Kim or not, but Kim likes to argue.
He's a lawyer.
I like to argue. You know, my degrees are in philosophy. I love to argue, but I don't think I ever won with Kim. And Doug and I worked with Kim on that test design book. So the guy knows what he's talking about. And he's a fairly smart lad.
Great. So the agile testing, Crispin and Gregory, that's feels
Yes.
a little more contemporary. People might not all love it the same way. Explore It by Elizabeth Hendrickson.
Yes.
I still reach for that.
And yet, Lisa Crispin was actually in Denver, and she was a big part of our squad organization. And then she up and moved to someplace on the other side of the Ohio, you know, to us Colorado folks, New Hampshire, Vermont, you know, there, New York. Anyway, but she was a regular speaker at our local user group.
Another book by Kim that's it's outdated. The law is no longer good, but Bad Software, a book he wrote about the legal issues that can arise out of running software. It's had a big impact on my career, and it's a lot easier to convince people to fix bugs when you can say, we might get sued for this. I'm not a lawyer. I have no desire to go to law school or anything, but you can say, maybe we check with legal before we, use this wording or ship this feature or something. And it's been really impactful for I don't know if you can still get that book. But the kinds of thinking that I got out of that book were really important to me.
Well, thanks for coming. If you want to contact me, my middle initial is M. It looks like small, but then that's small.
And I have one more book. One more book. Jerry's book, Becoming a Technical Leader. So when I encounter, you see the young people on the teams that I coach, it's like, yeah, I wish I'd read this book in my 20s instead of in my 40s.
Jerry Weinberg, Becoming a Tech. Okay, thanks for coming.
Thank you.